Good morning. Well, everyone at home are having their first coffee and maybe breakfast, but we are here in Riga Conference, and we are going to have a discussion about the world according to Russians. I'm together with Michael Fishman, who is a host of TV Rain, and has been a journalist for more than 20 years and looking at political space in Russia. So I think we will have a wonderful discussions. I really encourage you to also use the power of social media and look in Twitter. Use the conference hashtag RigaConf17 and ask questions. I will be looking into my phone and checking if there are any comments or questions that we can make use of. So. When we talk about the world according to Russians, we kind of tend to think about Vladimir Putin, the world according to him or the world according to Kremlin. Do you think there is a difference between these two worlds?
Well, first, thanks for having me, and it's really a magnificent view. Absolutely fantastic. Yes, there's always this debate about what Russia really thinks. And there is a reason for this debate, because if we take the polls, we clearly see that Russia's public opinion is very flexible, and it's to a very big extent pretty much shaped by Russian power apparatus. Through state propaganda and state media, mostly television, of course, because 90% of Russians still watch these first, second, third, and fourth television channels, which they are used to watch from Soviet times. That's what they still do, and I can give you an example of how it works. So according to the latest poll, for example, Russians think of the amount of Russians thinking of Europe badly is about 40%, 50%, to be correct. 2 years ago, it was 70%. What changed during these two years? Kremlin's policy did. That's what changed. And that immediately transferred through state media to Russian audiences and shaped their mindset. So on big issues, where Russia is going, how we perceive, what is our relationship with the West, the Kremlin pretty much has the key to what Russia is thinking now.
And there were discussions that at first Donald Trump is seen as a friend, and then kind of at one moment it changed. Can you tell a bit more about this? So, and it kind of shows that it is really a key you can turn on and off.
Yes, of course, and this was very visible during this latest American presidential election, because as you probably know from the Washington's White House already, but not only from there. I refer to all these investigations going on, that Russia was fully supporting Trump and trying to downplay Hillary Clinton's position. And also through Russian propaganda. So to Russian audience, Trump was the hope for the better future, and Hillary Clinton was some kind of evil force trying to stay in power, this evil American establishment. But then somehow things gone wrong. As they always do, and yes, the concept has changed, and now, well, if you ask now a Russian TV host, or even just an average Russian, he would probably answer that Trump is he's not bad, but he is a hostage of this still evil American establishment, which he tried to break through, but he failed.
But do you have a feeling that sometimes these narratives just go out of hand and something is being, like an alternative fact or post-truth idea is being created and no one was in charge of it, it was just a coincidence?
The phenomena of Russian mindset is that we in Russia, Russian audience, Russian public opinion is very much used to this concept of alternative facts, of what facts mean, which now world is only trying to understand with the whole Trump thing, and I mean that the idea that facts are not necessarily true. We live with it for quite a while. I can give you an example. A few years ago, when the war in Ukraine broke out, there was a report, television, very inflammatory report about a toddler being crucified in Donbas region, and very quickly it was clear that it was a pure lie, that nothing like this happened. But it was all over the place on Russian television. And they even had to admit it, that yes, it was a lie. There was no toddler, no one was crucified. But the poise, the idea, the answer was, yes, it was not true, but it still matters. There is truth which does not rely on facts in Russian concept of how Russia sees the world and its own future. Truth does not rely on facts. Facts may be different, they may be alternative, they may be found untrue, but it doesn't change the bigger truth, which is related to some bigger cause. Yes, this toddler thing didn't happen, but the truth still is that we are under attack, and that it's still there. So, and it makes the agenda very easy to manage because you can make easy turns. I can give you another example about history. For example, a few years ago, Russia officially treated Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact as a criminal collusion between Soviet Union and Germany. It was when 4 years ago, 5 years ago. Dmitry Medvedev, then president, actually stated that it was a criminal collusion. Now, the same thing is perceived again officially as military necessity, which was needed for Russia's sovereignty, etc., etc. Again, officially. And it doesn't surprise anybody that things like that change very quickly and that are that flexible. So Russia's mind is used to this kind of flexibility.
But do you think it also corresponds to time that people are getting older? Those people who remember what was about the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact are maybe dying or not watching TV.
In 5 years?
Yes, in 5 years maybe it's easier to overwrite history when no one.
It's not about that Russian society changed so much in 5 years that now it thinks differently. No.
Well, maybe 5 years ago it would be more outrageous. Don't you think so?
No, I don't. No, it could happen 2 years ago. It could happen yesterday. It can happen tomorrow. Tomorrow we can find ourselves in a position where, yes, again we find out that it was a criminal collusion, and it doesn't affect. It doesn't mean that what we thought yesterday was not true. It just does not. It's not important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So,
we're used to changing our mind about Russia had made a big turn during the last 15 years politically, globally in the world where Russia is going. Russia was looking at itself as part of the Western world 15 years ago. In 2008, Dmitry Medvedev, then president, started reset with Obama administration, where the whole thing is now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to make these turns because we Russians, as a society, are used to this kind of turns of the agenda. We don't find, as a society, that it's that it's somehow that it shouldn't be otherwise. That there should be other way. That there should be some stability in what Russia ideologically is. There is no this kind of stability.
But is there also this one opinion you have if someone on the street asks you what you think about Stalin's regime, and then there is another thing that you talk to your, people at home in the kitchen, the kitchen conversations like in Soviet times, that,
Yes.
there were two worlds you were living in.
Yes.
Is it the same here?
To some extent, but again it's different because before in the 70s you couldn't see monuments both to Stalin and Stalin's victims erasing being built at the same constructed at the same moment. Now we're in that kind of situation.
So it kind of tells that there is no truth. It's all fog.
Yes,
nothing is clear.
There is no truth, and everything is truth. Stalin was a murderer, and he was a great builder of Russian nation at the same time. And it does not make us feel bad or good about anything. It's just sort of the whole average way of accepting is, yes, that's our Russian history. So what? What's the problem? Just it's Russian. Part of all of it is Russian history. There is no moral angle to whatever. At least that's the crucial part of the agenda. There is no moral angle of looking to anything important.
But if we take a look at young people, so they are using social media more, so they probably gain a kind of a bit different worldview, and if we take a look at those who were born in during Putin's regime, so they have a different opinions towards life. They would want to live in Russia, and we can see that in protests there are a lot of youngsters, and Kremlin media, of course, is saying that they were brought there and they were paid for. But do you think they can make change? Maybe not now, but in 5 or 10 years, or it's just a matter of time?
Indeed, what politically important happened in Russia during this year, that youth really has emerged as a player, starting from last March, when somehow protest rallies waved around the whole country. They were not very numerous rallies, but they were across the whole country. That's what made it so special, because usually it's Moscow or St. Petersburg. That time it was really in basically every city. And so yes, and that's when the Kremlin started thinking about, and also everyone else, because we didn't think about it, that hey, looks like youngsters have their own agenda, and they are different from the rest of society. And partly it is true, yes. It's a different world where there is no. They are to a large extent immune to this state propaganda because they simply do not watch television. They are more on YouTube or Vkontakte, which is Russian analog of Facebook, and also on Facebook and everywhere else. And they do not have so they stay pretty much safe of this environment, and they are not. But the problem is, the question is, how far can it go, and how fast? Because still we understand that these are small factions still inside Russia's youth. The rest of Russia's youth, unfortunately or fortunately, this is how things are, have to get used to live in an environment structurally, economical, social, political, where all they see around them is the state. And this is also what makes them different from the youth from 15 years ago. Russia's economy is now to much more extent state economy than it was 20, 15 years ago. Russia's ideas of pluralism, of interaction, of communication are very different from what they were. And these people, this generation, they do not even remember that initially it was supposed to be different. So this is also a factor in this whole game.
But this is also kind of a good thing because, well, I've read that, well, in many researches actually, it's been said that pensioners are the ones who are holding the strongest towards Putin's regime because they're afraid to, you know, from the 1990s.
And they also depend from the state
Yeah.
more than everyone else. And this was but this has always been like that. So this didn't change, but other things did.
And but do you think there is a big regional differences in Russia? Because, well, usually in the news when we hear about protests, it's either in Moscow,
Yes.
or mostly in Moscow, and we hear a lot about what's going on in St. Petersburg. But Russia is a big country.
Yes. Well, we don't know much. There's not a lot of expertise. There is not a lot of knowledge about what Russia is actually, specifically in the regions. We only can see from I don't know, Navalny's rallies of this year, or his latest rallies. He's just been on at the Far East, and he managed to gather some crowds. But again, what does it mean if a 2,000 crowd stages a rally protest in Sibir capital, Novosibirsk? Does it mean that Novosibirsk is sort of the started thinking differently as a region? Not so necessarily, but something is going on. This is true. Yes, it's not like it's a plain, totally. You know, it's not George Orwell's 1984. No, it's definitely not.
Yeah, and it's probably very hard actually to run for president in Russia because asks for a lot of resources.
It's impossible to run for president in Russia because there is no presidential election in Russia. It's some kind of right with already understood outcome. Everyone knows, and it's a presidential election in which the forthcoming winner picks his opponents.
Yes.
So it's not an election. The idea of the election has far gone. Of course.
And if you take a look at the last elections and these elections, do you see significant changes?
A lot of change. Very, very different. Because 6 years ago, when Putin was running for president, it was not perceived so well. If you remember, his approval rating dropped 30%, 20%, okay, when they did their castling with Dmitry Medvedev, and he announced that he would be coming back to Kremlin. The big part of the society did not accept that at that point, which actually shaped the campaign and the forthcoming term. And in the end, the war in Donbass, Ukraine, Crimea, Russia West, the whole thing was shaped then into in 2011 when Putin realized that he is not that well appreciated. Now he's not that welcome. Now the situation is very different. The opposition is destroyed. The feeling that there might be any alternative, which was very vivid at that time, is now dead. To a bigger, yes, there are these protest rallies, but they do not shape. They're different from Bolotnaya movement because they do not provide society with this kind of feeling that something is going wrong and something can be done about it. Now it's not the case. So this makes his re-election much more, I'd say, peaceful in a way, because everyone complies, the society complies. We understand what's going to happen. Everyone knows that, and there is no alternative to that. And this is what's so important to understand about this forthcoming election.
And well, do you think the videos like Navalny's videos about political corruption at the highest levels matter? Do they reach out towards other audiences than only, those who are using social media and Europeans?
They certainly do. Yes, they certainly do. They certainly do, and they put this. They play with this very strong feeling of course, of lack of order, of lack of this difference between the rich and the poor, between the elite and the nation, between officials who are perceived as corrupt. But again, it doesn't affect, and it's everywhere. And Navalny's videos really reach the people. The numbers are huge.
Yes.
For YouTube videos. They're really huge, but they do not provide, I think the problem is that they do not shape the alternative future. It's very hard to try to shape this future, and Navalny does not help that at the moment. Yes, the idea that a lot of things are wrong is there. They are wrong, true. But what can be done about it? That's the question that he probably can't answer at the moment. Well, he says, yes, let's elect me as a president, but again, that brings us to point one.
Yeah. And well, I think we have like 2 minutes left. And yesterday, in one of the night talks, we had a discussion about this disruption of the media space and about the power of social media and automated activities on social media. And do you think that Russia can be able to shut down social media if it would be necessary?
I think yes. I think yes. Because it's the system that's gradually eating space around it. And now, if we're talking about communication and freedom of speech and this field, now basically everything is under control. Like everything. I'm a journalist. I know what I'm talking about. Press is under control. So next step would be social media. If they would, there would be social media. So it's probably not a joke when Russian watchdog, official watchdog Roskomnadzor notifies Facebook that, hey, if you do not comply and play by the rules, and next year we're going to shut you down. I would take it seriously.
And social media usually obey these rules. Well, they cooperate with China, and
True. Yes, of course. But again, it's the question. It's of course for Facebook, it will be a political question whether to comply, specifically given the circumstances and the whole investigation, and which goes on in America. Which will yes, we know that social networks can be playing by the rules. Facebook in Turkey, in India, in Pakistan, I think Facebook censors a lot of stuff. So they might, but they will just it will be their call, which would be politically more sensitive thing to do. But the thing is, we can't answer for Facebook what Facebook will do, but we can predict with quite high probability that Russia state will be after it in a while.
Okay, thank you for being here. And I think in a few minutes the next session will start. And please stay in the live stream. Thank you.